Hey guys, so let's keep working on this piece here. You see on this one, I'm gonna keep doing a little bit of the design, but as I'm happy with some of the pieces that I currently have, I'm just gonna start cleaning up some of the stuff and combining it. So see here, I want those horns combined with the skull because I'm gonna have to unify them later on the sculpt. So I combined them. I combined the subtools. I did a Dynamesh, weld them together, and then I'm running a ZRemesher at a lower value, and then I duplicated the subtool before I did that, so I can reproject the details and the poly paint into my mesh. So you can see here I have a clean topology, and then I projected my details back. So I'm doing the same thing for the lower jaw, duplicated the subtool, ZRemeshed the geometry, and then reprojected the color and the mesh information. And now I can start cleaning up some of the details, and it's gonna be easier to manipulate stuff. And if you use ZBrush, and I'm sure all you guys do, it's hard to add details or refine a piece if you're using a Dynamesh, or if you're not using a clean topology, because some of those triangles might start pinching the geometry. So that's why it's important to have a clean mesh when you're going to start cleaning up or refining your geometry. And then for production, I would probably still do this for any type of production, because it doesn't matter, if it's going to be this is going to be a game mesh, and I'm gonna worry about topology later. If I don't do this at this point, then again, if I'm going to start refining my high res, I'm just going to end up with a mesh have issues to add small details, small wrinkles because of those triangles. So this is a very standard process that I do when before, or even if I go back and Dynamesh this again, if I want to change shapes again, I don't get attached at this point. You saw how easy it is to ZRemesh something and then reproject. You might start get a little trickier if both of these meshes were combined, like the upper and lower jaw, because I would have to isolate the mesh if I want to reproject something, because you might get projection on the lower part from the upper part, so it might get a little trickier. But I always try to keep those separate, or try to keep as much things as separate as I can. Like I said, the horn, it's important to just get it together because I want to sculpt them together. But the lower jaw and the upper jaw, even if this was a human, I could still have the lower jaw separate. And again, it's a choice that I'll have to make if I still want to play with the design. You saw me working on the eye here, and I've showed this before, but it's very straightforward of just painting just the RGB, of just painting the iris one color, and then reducing the size a little bit, or keeping it the same size and just doing the secondary color, just so you get more information on the eyes. And there's a placeholder for later when I paint the eyes in a little bit more detail. But again, this helps me understanding the design and understanding a little bit more of the character. You see the eyes are going to change many times throughout this whole process, but now I always try to get something in there just to help me visualize the character a little bit better. If this was for a cinematic, then I'll probably spend more time with my topology before finalizing the details, because again, when I mentioned a little bit earlier, it might be hard to reproject stuff. It's always possible, and it just might be a little more extra work if you're not paying attention to your topology. So I'll probably do a more clean topology, maybe even bring in with the UVs already. But my shape needs to be locked on. Like if I'm still designing as I'm doing it here, and I'm gonna still be designing the rest of the character, I wouldn't do that. But when I'm 100% happy with the design, then I'll just clean up my topology with more attention. I'll probably do it in Max, which it's the software that I'm most comfortable with, and then bring it in with a clean topology so I can just finish up the sculpt. If this was for a game, and I know I'm gonna reproject stuff later on, then I probably wouldn't worry at all about this process, and I'll just do a ZRemesh like I'm doing here, and then later I would retopologize the model, and then bake the high res in like X normal or Max, or depending on the studio, probably X normal, and then just go from there. I also do a lot of tests. Like in this case, it's not important, but I'll probably do a test of just opening the mouth and see how that reads. Thinking more overall about the character as a finished product. Here I'm still designing. Like you can see, I'm still adding extra elements to the design. I'm playing with the skull shape. So even here, I'll probably go back later and do a zero measure again, do a projection again. Really try not to get attached to the technical. And you can see here, even the details that I put it before, they just don't work anymore because I'm changing the design here. So just going with the clay and trying to sketch those things in. You also saw I was turning the eyes with just the transpose tool, just to bring in some of the personality that I'm thinking for the character. Everything helps. All this stuff helps. Again, I think some of the things that I have going on here are stronger than what I end up with the time that I had on this. So I'll probably go back and then make some changes based on the early versions. I've been working for different type of productions throughout my entire career, and every studio has different techniques or one different things or have different requirements. When I'm doing personal projects, I try not to get attached to any of that stuff. It's very free flow form of just trying to get things as fast as I can so I can iterate on top of it. I really try not to get attached of just trying to get everything perfect, because I know things are going to change. And one thing that I learned through all these years is that you have to not get attached to tools in general. Like every time I see people asking about brushes or ways of doing certain things, I think the best way of doing everything is just by doing it. Try not to get attached to just like different techniques. Stuff like hair, which is something that people I guess have most questions about it. It's always if you do hair, just do it. Like just make a cylinder and start duplicating around. See if you can get it to feel good. See if you can just understand the shape of it, and that's the most important thing. So I just try to apply that for everything. If you want to do something, just start with the basic shape. Try to understand the properties of it. Like try to understand how it flows, why it's doing. Try to find references, and again try to understand why it's doing what's doing, and then that's when you get the most out of it. Because at the end of the day, if you think about just sculpting in general, if you're doing something in clay, or of course there's different techniques or different tools you can use, but everything is like pretty much handmade, and you just have to understand how things are built in real life and try to recreate. Trying to understand form, gravity, all this stuff. And same thing in ZBrush. I see a lot of people just getting attached to tools, or what technique did you use to add certain texture to something, what alpha did you use, like that type of stuff is it's such a minor part of the project or the process. It's a very minor part of the process. I think to be a good character artist, or to be a good 3D artist in general, like you should just understand anatomy, understand, have a good sense of design, understand even if you're following a concept, like why did the artist put something in there. Have a good sense of just understanding the personality of the character that you're working on. Like even if you already have a concept, like that might help to add your touch to the piece, and that's what makes things stand out from all the rest. So again, tools are important, techniques are important, but for certain things, like for the most things, it's probably not as important. I spend a lot of my time just trying to get better at those things. Just get better at sculpting, trying to break down the process of certain, like an artist that I admire, and just trying to understand why they did something a certain way. I'll give an example, like Shifu Brothers. they're very good traditional sculptors. Like they have a very specific style, and to me, like I spent a lot of time just trying to understand why they did certain things the way they did, and you know, their mind operate different than mine. Coming from, I started with traditional sculpting, but my 3D got in the way very quickly, and I spent most of my time on that. I still do a lot of traditional, but I think I got carried over on the 3D wave. And I think for 3D, you know, we're a lot more technical, and I think now at this point of my career, I'm trying to detach myself from some of that and just trying to understand more creatively, you know, what guys like the Shiflet are doing, and why they're doing certain things, you know, why they're making some decisions, and try to bring that into my work. So I guess, well, let's talk about that, because I mentioned that in the different video, and at this point here in the video, I'm just refining stuff, and you know, I can be doing this forever. And I guess there's not much to talk about here, except like I'm using clay to add details and moving things around, and you can see I do a lot of back and forth of just, you know, trying to get maybe into an angle that I'm thinking that the image is going to be rendered on, seeing how his personality is feeling, seeing how every you know, all the design elements that I'm putting on, how they flow together, if all the curves are working, if everything has a beginning and an end. So if you see like on the side of the skull, when the ornament goes up, like what is the continuity for that? Like if it's the horn, when it goes down, what is the continuity? If it's the cheekbone. So you can see a lot of those ornaments flowing, you know, back and forth. And that's what I'm trying to find here. Anyway, so just going back to more, you know, everything that I did in my career, or different projects that I worked on, they all have different requirements, you know, for working for a cinematic pipeline, of just getting things cleaned up, more high res, and having a different process for that, or just getting a, you know, quick sketch in ZBrush, and then getting the topology very clean, so I can just finish my details and then rebake stuff, and you know, have a lot more freedom technically to I guess hit certain quality or execute or on something. And that's a very different process for you know, if you're doing a statue or a toy, where you're just pretty much working on a high res, and then you know, maybe you have to do cuts after that. Or for toys, I had cases where you know, having a lot of articulations, that's a different process of just starting with a good base for articulations and then just doing some work on top of that, versus doing you know, sculpting for collectibles, when you just have to do you know, an awesome sculpt, and it's everything about the high res, and then later worrying about the cuts, or worrying about, you know, how to do modes and all that stuff. And even that, it's a different you know, depending on what you want to go with your career or the stuff that you're trying to do. I guess, you know, you can do things to help you improve on that. Like if you go to traditional and just try and understand mold making and all that stuff, is a different process than what we're doing here. You know, it's very important to get good at that, so you understand the different stages of the process. Like same thing if you're going to do a cinematic, like understanding and same thing for game art, but like understanding rigging, like how much you have to put on topology. You know, I was fortunate enough to, you know, be able to work on all those different areas, so I have a good understanding of all of them. But they also you know, didn't let me focus too much on a specific thing. And I think the gaming industry for me came in, not to say late, because, you know, I was still pretty young, but I spent years of my career working with advertising and cinematic production, and getting a good understanding of building things for that. And then for games, even though there's a lot of similarities, you know, there's a different process of how we build things and how we solve different issues. So for a character itself, of course, the biggest thing is just understanding anatomy, being a good sculptor overall, because that's like, I'm gonna say probably like 70, you know, 80%, depending on the area that you are of your work. So I guess that's the good thing about just trying different things. You know, the industry is very big, and I see a lot of people starting right now having a, I guess, a strong feeling about what they should be working on, but in reality, you probably see that it kind of goes with what's available, I guess. You know, if you're a good sculptor, a lot of opportunities are going to show up, and I guess you're going to find yourself on the stuff that you like to do the most, because you really know, you know, if you like something or not when you start doing it. You know, you might really want to work with statues and collectibles, but then when you get to the job itself, it might not be as satisfying as you think, and then, you know, you might find yourself wanting to work with video games because of the creative freedom and you know, some of the projects that you can work on. And then same thing with cinematic, like you can push a lot of the just, you know, quality of assets and just make something you know, technically very impressive. So, you know, there's a lot of good and bad things about all the different sides of the industry. And for me, you know, being able to work on all of them, I kind of found myself into professionally into going more with the games or with the game industry. But then again, I go back and forth. Like I still do freelance for different clients, and you know, I feel I guess I feel the pleasure of working with all of them. So, and now with just my personal project, you know, going back to the design stuff, design elements, like I mentioned, and you know, just trying to be a little more creative with the stuff that I do, and trying to, you know, make my my own designs and see how far I can push it with the skills that I have. So you see here, I'm still designing, you know, going back to the piece. I'm still, you know, after all this time, I'm still adding things and changing the design. I felt that the hoodie was something that was kind of weird, and trying to go more with this vibe of like, you know, more of a general type of thing, and adding a back of a helmet was something that I thought was cool. Then you see at the end, it's something that I don't think it really works with the angle that I initially thought of the character, so that's something that I'll probably go back and maybe find a better angle. But just overall, that's the thing when you're working with 3D, you know, different from sketching on paper or something like that, is that you get a better sense of just, you know, 360 and how the character feels. But that could also be dangerous of not knowing exactly, you know, having one angle that kind of shows off the character. I've done some work from Brad Rigney's pieces before, and I think, you know, there's some influence from his work on this piece, and you see that, you know, I think with every artist, like you probably get you know, images on your head of some stuff that you like, and you kind of lean towards that, and that's something I try to get away from. You know, that's a good and bad thing about ArtStation. When you know, see all the works that's out there, and then you get influenced by someone or you get inspired by someone, and then you start seeing a trend of works coming out that, you know, looks very similar. So even though it's awesome, you know, ArtStation probably have, you know, solution for all your problems, like Stephen Loki said to me the other day. But it could also be dangerous, you know, when people just get attached to this, you know, same style of work. And you see here, I'm just trying different things. I don't really know what I'm going for here, but just playing with some ideas and see what stays and what goes. That goes back to like saving different versions of your work, because here I can probably erase a lot of work that, you know, might be stronger, and just go with something that that might not be, you know, 100%. One thing that I'm not doing as much here, but I usually do on my sketches and projects, just playing up with different materials early on. So if something would be metal, I'll probably just add a matte cap of metal, again, just to try to get a better sense of what the final image would look like. And that's something that ZBrush really allows us to mess with. I think the way matte caps work on a viewport, different from a lot of different programs, it really lets you have a good idea of what your final render is going to look like. And we'll talk about this later too. I'll show you guys all my my layers and my steps to render something is it doesn't look that much different from what the viewport is, and that's a good and bad thing, I guess. But there's there are cool techniques to get away with it and make sure things look pretty good. So we'll get to that. And you see here, after I do a zero mesh and reprojection now, and then I'm just smoothing everything, and I'm just worrying with my secondary shapes. I'm just worrying with those details that give the forms, but not really small details or wrinkle, any of that. At this point here, I'm going to start refining the mesh. I'm going to start going back and adding, finding the things that were working, on the secondary of the volumes that I had. But I really smooth all the geometry, and then that might gives me a different idea for what I could be adding at this point. So you can see, even on the horns or in the teeth, it feels very smooth and gives I guess it gives my eyes and my brain something that maybe I wasn't seeing it before. And then when I go back, I can refine it differently or find more interesting shapes, not going away from the anatomy. At this point here, I started just gathering a bunch of real skulls, because that's going to drive even my tertiary details later. Like if I know I'm going to put details in an area and I have a reference that's strong and I'm trying to go shoot for that, I probably wouldn't spend that much time on the secondary shape. So like the front of the skull, the temporal, all the stuff. I have good references at this point on my other monitor of just real skulls or even animal skulls. And I start looking at just concept art and maybe things that can help me inspire colors or lighting at the end, and really have a good understanding of everything I could do and all the range that I could play with. Because at this point, when I start refining it, I can spend a lot of time, and again, that's the time that usually is the most time consuming of creating a character, is when you start refining it, sculpting it, doing tertiary details, all the stuff really is time consuming. So having a good understanding of what you're going for at this point is super important. Like this phase, I'm not playing anymore with adding more geometry or adding a different shape of the skull or whatever it is. I'm not really trying to design a lot of stuff anymore. I'm designing what's inside the silhouette, but I'm really not changing it that much. And again, like I mentioned before, the eyes, it probably changed like 10-15 times. So finding an easy way to paint the eyes is very cool. And here you definitely can see, by smoothing all the details and now start refining it, is that you kind of get a different idea of what the final mesh could be. Before, when I was just adding, it was kind of very one-to-one. But here, I'm helping, or I'm letting those shapes drive some of my decisions at this point. So you see the teeth is very heavily based on what the smooth area was. And I'm just kind of going with the flow and trying to get all the shapes refined. And I'm still like you see later, I'll do the teeth separate because I want to have a better control of the refinement here. But I'm just catching the shape so I can get a good footprint. So when I make the final teeth asset, I have something to follow. And even in this phase, when I'm starting to refine the secondary shapes, my tools, they don't really change much. I'm still using standard, inflate, dam standard. Use a little bit of clay tubes, but mainly my brush here is just clay. Moving things around, refining it. Like even when I start adding the tertiary details, I do a lot of stuff with just alpha. And at this phase, I just do a quick UVs with just UV master, so I have something if I want to project on, or use like the noise styling. then I have an alpha, I have a UV that's good. But if I'm not doing that, pretty much all my tertiary details are done with like DEM standard. Maybe I'll use some of the slash brush. I think is pretty good. Gives a very strong base, but you see that on the next video.